Tyson Foods raising protein pricing through unethical and illegal practices. Amazon starting a new grocery business. This and much more. This is this week's Repertoire Report. Thank you all for listening. Hope you all are doing well. Before we get into this, if you are watching on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. And if you're watching or listening on a Spotify or Apple, please leave a review. It helps us get more traction. Let's start this out with a story that I found very disturbing. This one is going to be coming from Food Dive. And so basically the story or the context here is that Tyson Foods is found to be legally liable of conspiring to raise pork prices. So the backdrop, prices on groceries have been raising over the last 5 years, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Pricing has been going up. Pricing has been very, very touchy for consumers, American consumers, and it has truly made difficult the lives of many Americans. And so to then see this news story comes out, it can only be met with some sort of anger. So Tyson Foods recently agreed to a record-breaking lawsuit settlement of paying out $85 million to consumers due to limiting supply and raising prices on pork products. The lawsuit states that Tyson conspired with JBS and other manufacturers to contain and constrain supply in order to raise pricing and hence make more of a profit. And I'm going to read here a quote from Food Dive. Meatpacking giants have agreed to pay out close to $200 million so far to settle allegations that a sophisticated pricing scheme forced grocery stores and consumers to pay higher prices for bacon, sausages, and other pork products. This lawsuit was first filed in 2018. The price-fixing lawsuit alleges 8 of the largest U.S. pork producers illegally conspired to align production numbers and boost profitability between 2009 and 2021. The producers control more than 80% of the pork market, the lawsuit said. Tyson's pork brands include Hillshire Farms, Ballpark Franks, and Wright Brand Bacon. Pork made up 11% of Tyson's $53 billion in sales for fiscal year 2024. They previously settled the case in 2022 for $20 million. 2 years later, Seaboard reached a $10 million settlement, and Hormel Foods agreed to pay $4.5 million. Quote, the Tyson settlement adds to a litany of price-fixing and wage-suppressing allegations against some of the largest U.S. meat packers. Tyson previously agreed to pay $221 million to settle a chicken price-fixing suit in 2021. And quote, they did not immediately respond to Food Dive for a request for comment. The final settlement agreed still needs approval from a district judge. Pretty astounding. Pretty astounding. They go on to say that basically JBS also previously settled the case in 2022 for $20 million, like we said. And just wild. Insane. Really. It's insane. The fact that we have gotten to a point where protein suppliers, meat suppliers are all so consolidated into almost monopolies that we are now seeing lawsuits played out where, you know, when Americans are having to pay so much more money for product, so much more money for protein, so much more money for pork products, for beef, for poultry, the consolidation of our food system is doing untold amounts of damage on us as consumers, as business owners, as people that just want to enjoy food and buy food for our family or our business. It is critical that we know what is going on with these larger companies, because the fact of the matter remains that this price fixing, this control over our meat markets, this control over a key consumer good is going to only favor these larger corporations. And so I wanted to start this Repertoire report with this reporting because it just continually goes to show that the more oversight we have into our food system, the better. And when we lack that oversight, when we lack that care, the drive, the ability to go ahead and try and, you know, rein in some of these large meat companies, food companies that produce all this, it only ends up, our failure to do so ends up being a negative for the American consumer and the American population as a whole and our food system as a whole. So to have Tyson do this is really, it's really awful. And like I said, just think about this. It is a price fixing case. And to break it down, they're allegedly being accused of conspiring with Tyson, is conspiring with JBS and other meat packing giants to just basically to constrain supply. So what they're doing is they're going to these different companies and they're going to say, hey, we're going to constrain supply, or you all constrain your supply, and we'll do the same. And together we'll be able to raise prices because we're basically going to funnel and tunnel down on what we're actually giving to grocery stores and consumers, and that fake demand or the fake constraints that they've placed on their product will increase demand and increase the price they then can charge for their products so they can make more of a profit. And then they basically just like keep controlling the supply chain so that there's less and less pork available to whatever their needs are, and then they can just price it higher. And so when we're looking at this in 2025, it's like our price is higher right now for a lot of these major companies because they don't have good supply chain, or is it because they are constraining their supply? And I do believe that most companies are actually having supply chain issues. But the fact of the matter remains is you have major companies such as Tyson purposefully conspiring to ensure pricing is higher on products such as pork and pork products. And that is the biggest issue right now for American consumers, in my opinion, in the food world. And it's just beyond grocery. It's for restaurant owners and their prices and all of that. And it's just truly angering. It is truly angering because if you're a restaurant owner over the last 5 years, you've had to deal with so many different things. And to know that one of the largest, if not the largest meat supplier is artificially screwing with their supply chain to raise prices for you, if you know that that's happening, I don't know how much angrier you can get on that. It is a disgusting business act that is ruining and hurting farmers, consumers, grocery stores, restaurant owners, food business owners. It hurts everyone when the supply chain is rattled like this for pure profit for a corporation that supplies the product. So I just wanted to start with that. It's something I was very passionate about. I'm very passionate on the impact the Tysons, the JBSs are having on our food system. And it's not great to see. And it's something that I think you all should be aware of. All right. Going on next.
Hang on, interrupting the show here to suggest another insight that I shared recently. I partnered with our friends at 7 Shifts to do a deep dive on their latest industry report, talking all about the current state of tech in restaurants in 2025. They did the legwork to ask over 500 restaurants a series of questions, and they bucketed those folks into 4 stages that you might be in, depending on how analog or digital you are operating right now in your business, and the real numbers behind what that means. Beyond that quantified data, I'm also a big fan of how they touch on the qualitative measures too, and how better tools can lead to happier and better performing teams. The video is out now on the Justin Khanna YouTube channel. It's linked in the show notes. It's a quick 8-minute summary just to save you some time, and I'd love if that's what you listen to next. Okay, back to the show.
Okay, next is an article from the Food Institute, Government Shutdown, How the Food Industry Could Feel the Heat. I was wondering this as well, and so I wanted to kind of just bring this because government shutdown is a big deal right now. I have people that are impacted by the shutdown either way. And I just wanted to kind of share this really interesting insight into what happens to the food industry when the government shuts down. So this is from the Food Institute, quote, delayed government reports, fewer dollars in the pockets of furloughed government workers, and overall economic skittishness caused by uncertainty could upend much of the food and beverage industry if the government shutdown is lengthy. Democrats and Republicans failed to fund the government before the fiscal year ended October 1st, and among the first casualties were government workers deemed non-essential. Some 750,000 people, which translates to 23% of the federal government's workforce. In communities heavily dependent on the government for jobs, that means a sizable number of people out of work, at least temporarily. Goldman Sachs said the current shutdown differs from those in the past since there is no sign of negotiations. There's been a threat to fire furloughed employees, and Goldman analysts predicted the shutdown could push the unemployment rate up as much as 0.2 percentage points. So how does this affect the food industry? So on a more esoteric level, they say the government will now be producing fewer statistics on which analysts can be based decisions. Quote, all food manufacturing facilities are subject to USDA or FDA inspections. Stephen Drombowski, director of consumer markets at QAD, told the Food Institute, depending on the type of facility, there may be inspectors stationed at a plant every day of the week. Some have rotating schedules and come on a routine basis. After all, Dombrowski noted products would not have the clearance to ship under a lengthy government shutdown. Yet another factor leading to customer service issues. In addition, if the products in question have short shelf lives, inventory problems could arise due to expired materials. Also, a prolonged shutdown could have a severe impact on supply chains. Quote, these facilities may have reduced staff, which could delay inspections, customs clearances, and the movement of goods. All these issues can contribute to inventory shortages and increased lead times. This government shutdown could also reduce or eliminate inspector presence. This will cause serious delays in delivering products. So if you know anything about food manufacturing, if USDA facility needs to have inspectors on site, FDA does their inspections as well. So a lot of critical things run by the government are being affected right now. Lou Biscotti, managing director at CBIZ, said much will depend on the length of the shutdown. Quote, regulatory agencies will delay approvals, permits, or inspections because they must handle emergencies like recalls or other food safety issues. This will then make them unavailable for routine inspections and approvals. It could delay the launch of new products since that often requires approval from government regulators. Essential published data, such as the Bureau of Labor Statistics report, will also face delays or may be completely omitted. Not having that data can leave regulators unsure of what steps to take next. So the FDA's plans to reform safety designations for food ingredients and additives could be delayed as well, making it more difficult for companies to do any strategic planning for new products. Similarly, companies with significant exposure to agricultural commodities are likely facing challenges already. Quote, the fall harvest season is a painful time for this to happen, as USDA report data is an important planning resource that seems likely to be impacted. Again, more factors making it difficult for companies to plan effectively looking into 2026 and beyond. The potential impact on the Securities and Exchange Commission also shouldn't be dismissed, with as much as 90% of SEC employees facing furlough. M&A consolidation have been major trends in food and beverage years, so while not all potential deals fall under SEC purview, this presents yet another source of friction. So I share this for you all to be aware of, like, the government shutdown does have its impacts. And so when you have these shutdowns, it's just important to be aware, like, we rely on the federal government for a lot of critical things. And so if you start to experience supply chain, if you start to experience as a food owner different friction points, do note that this is going on. And it's interesting, right? Because the food industry, from a base level, like, while a shutdown might not affect your restaurant in the immediate, whereas, like, if you have a lot of people losing their jobs, like say you live in Washington, D.C., and you're losing your federal job, you're not working, you're getting paid right now, your traffic could go down. But what we may see is, if this goes on long enough, and I'm not saying right now, but if this goes on long enough, you may see supply chain issues just merely because of the fact that not as many inspectors from USDA are being used, not as much food policy or food oversight is being done, like permits being allowed through, new products being allowed to launch. So there could have ramifications. So this isn't like something to like scare anyone. This isn't to like share any negative. It's just to simply say that this is what happens when the government shuts down, and this is how it affects the food industry. All right, up next on the show. So, friend of the Line Cook Thoughts podcast and someone who I know Justin's talked to, we mentioned him last week. EJ Lagasse and Emeril Lagasse got recognized in the North America 50 Best Restaurants. Well, this week, they were shouted out in the New York Times, receiving 3 stars. Quote, Emeril's restaurant revived by his 22-year-old son. Bam, 3 stars. 3 years ago, EJ Lagasse took over his father's New Orleans flagship restaurant and made it an enchanting tasting menu experience. And this is just, I first want to say congratulations to both EJ and Emeril. For those of you who know my background, I had a podcast called Line Cook Thoughts many, many years ago. And my 6th episode ever was recording with EJ. I thought he had a really interesting story to tell, being the son of one of the most iconic chefs of American cuisine, in both dining and also like TV and like media. And so it was very interesting to talk to him. I'm very fascinated by how he's been able to kind of progress his career, especially in the, shadow of his dad and like all of the work he's done in the food industry. So you go on into this reporting by Tejal Rao, and it's pretty awesome to see. So they paint a picture of him reviving his dad's restaurant. This modernize and update Mr. Lagasse reorients you to the pleasures of trout, almondines, simply by making it well and presenting it with care in an abundance of Marcona almonds. Now I want to just stay on this point for a minute. I feel like the last era of food was molecular gastronomy, the Alineias, the El Bullis before them. And there is obviously such an importance to that food as well. And then we go into the Nordic cuisine. I think what EJ is showing in this next chapter of the Guard, of the chefs coming up, is let's do our cooking fundamentals, these in-depth, delicious dishes, really well again. I'm not saying that wasn't done before, but just to focus on trout almondine, modernized, and done really well with excellent cooking technique, a care of the craft, a care of what it means to be a chef and put out high-quality food. I think that's super critical, and I think it's just a interesting point to see behind what he's doing with his career and his level of cooking right now. So they go on to say the kitchen has a fondness for miniaturizing. Mr. Lagasse picked up on a prawn cracker technique from the local Vietnamese institution Pho Tao Bay to form the bite-sized fluted tart shell that holds a heap of barbecue shrimp pieces but breaks delicately. They share that, there's a focus on solid flavors, elevated yet practiced technique, and a focus on hospitality and dining. Really, really happy for him. It's a New York Times critics pick. Like I said, in New Orleans, it's a new American tasting menu. And just to see this, like the videos are amazing on there. There's so many great pictures of like the food and the service. Obviously like the icon that is Emeril Lagasse, like grew up watching him. Like to see the evolution of this. Like there's a picture of a butter service here, of a bread and butter service, I believe. And the glove waiter, spoons, serving food, and it really, this service is just really like pleasant to see. The cheesecake with the glove server's hands. And I like this quote here. So the cooking tends towards the unapologetically lavish. A little link of smoked boudin, decidedly tender with rice, is also a vehicle for foie gras. There's more in that pool of sauce, a cruel jus gras mounted with pieces of foie as if it were butter. There's even more in the oyster stew, made with tapioca poached in dashi. Though Mr. Lagasse said it's not a direct homage to Thomas Keller's Oysters and Pearls, the era of winky-faced, ultra-luxurious 90s fine dining is also a part of this restaurant's core programming, which is really cool to see. And then they go on to say, the mini but exuberantly tall banana cream pie is only a slight reimagining of the one in Emeril's opening menu. It's a beauty, though a slightly darker caramel would help give it the dimension and depth it deserves. And I thought a cute but rather bland slice of d'auberge cake couldn't quite justify its presence on the table in terms of taste, only in how well it fit the menu's narrative. When it comes to like things they could get better on, there's a really well-worded paragraph here that I think is interesting. Quote, when a meal is well executed at this level, the complaints will start to sound absurd. And I just want to just pause, because and I don't know, I don't want to speak for EJ, but there's always going to be things we have to work on. But I think the biggest praise they could have said was this. I think this is the most important sentence in the article. When a meal is well executed at this level, the complaints will start to sound absurd. You have done such a good job at the core premise of what you're serving that the complaints start to sound crazy. But it's true. The champagne could have been a little colder, and a cheese set out too recently didn't have the time it needed to open up. They go on to talk about undercooked caramels, but beyond that, not much. The ending of this is the luxuries of classic fine dining aren't being ironically recontextualized in Emeril's. They're being exalted, and the joy of the place is in how much it goes all out. But it's also in how the restaurant brings exuberance and warmth to a form that can so easily feel tired or cold to the touch. They share that there was a concern that one night in late summer, the city tends to slow down, was that the dining room wasn't full, but ends with it should have been. So, what do I say in all this? I say this. Super happy for EJ, super happy for what he's doing. It seems that their technical cooking is paying off. There's skill, there's passion, there's excitement. And I just hope to see the continued success. This is the type of restaurant that could really remake a city's dining scene. I know New Orleans has a lot of great food and a lot of great dining. But to have a revitalization of the brand of what Emeril's is, a revitalization of what the idea of an Emeril Lagasse restaurant is, into not just rest on the laurels of his dad, but to just evolve it and take it a step further, I find deserves commendation. So great job to him. Awesome write-up, and you should go check it out. All right. What's next on our agenda? It is Amazon's new grocery brand. So Amazon is aiming to capture more of the grocery market with a brand aimed at deal-conscious shoppers. The brand is a private label brand with items aimed to be close to or under $5. So from Bloomberg, they say, quote, called Amazon Grocery, the offering includes dairy, fresh produce, and meat, the company said on Wednesday. The new house brand, which combines the Amazon Fresh and Happy Belly lines, will be available online and at Amazon Fresh stores. Quote, during a time when consumers are particularly price conscious, Amazon Grocery delivers more than 1,000 quality grocery items across all categories that don't compromise on quality or taste, from fresh food items to crave-worthy snacks and pantry essentials, all at low competitive prices that help customers stretch their grocery budgets further. And then from food and wine, On October 1st, they're saying the e-commerce giant announced the launch of Amazon Grocery, its new private label. And they're going to say, quote, or during a time when consumers are particularly price conscious, Amazon Grocery delivers more than 1,000 quality grocery items across all categories. In the coming months, the new brand will roll out frozen pasta, meals, pie fillings, granola, and sliced loaf cakes, in addition to expanding its selection of deli meats, canned beans, and frozen vegetables. They're now available at Amazon.com. I'm kind of mixed on this. Not the biggest fan of Amazon having such a big, so much leverage in the grocery market. That being said, they are focused on price-conscious consumers. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure they will be successful because it's Amazon. But I think it speaks to a broader trend that, like, consumers are looking for deals. They're looking to get their products cheaper. This goes back to the anger I had during the Tyson story. Things are getting really expensive for people. We need to be aware of that. We need to acknowledge that in the food industry. So seeing Amazon do this, like, yes, it might be a benefit for shoppers, but also it does worry me the control they'll have over the grocery sector. So just something to keep an eye on and something I thought was important. All right. Next up, I cover every month the National Restaurant Association's Restaurant Performance Index. And guess what? Surprisingly, it tipped up in August, which I was not expecting. So the National Restaurant Association shares that So basically, the National Restaurant Association shared that the index went up 0.1%, and it stood at 99.8 in August. The RPI remained range-bound in recent months as higher same-store sales were offset by dampened customer traffic levels. Restaurant operators had their most optimistic sales outlook in 7 months, but they remained significantly less bullish about the economy as a whole. It also reported a modest net increase in same-store sales for the 5th consecutive month in August. 46% of restaurant operators said their same-store sales rose between August 2024 and August 2025, down slightly from 48% of operators who reported higher sales in July. 43% of operators said their sales declined in August compared to 42% in July. And in contrast to that, the net increase in same-store sales, restaurant operators continue to report dampened customer traffic readings. 38% of operators said their customer traffic rose between 2024 and 2025 of August, down slightly from 40% in July. And 42% of restaurant operators reported lower traffic in August compared to 46% in July. This represents the 7th consecutive month in which operators reported a net decline in customer traffic. And then this is very interesting. 54% of operators said that they made a capital expenditure for equipment, expansion, or remodeling during the last 3 months. And this represented the highest level in 20 months. Despite the mixed expectations for business conditions, a majority of restaurant operators are planning for capital spending in the coming months. 54% of operators said they plan to make a capital expenditure for equipment, expansion, or remodeling during the next 6 months. That was the 5th consecutive month in which a majority of operators signaled plans for capital spending. What does this mean? Well, let me break it down in my opinion. So, if we're looking at the Restaurant Performance Index, it's kind of staying level. I honestly thought it was going to do worse over the summer. Summer's a little bit of slower month for some places, but furthermore, you had a lot of economic factors hurting the general consumer. That being said, like we reported on last week, I think the prevalence of high earners making up more and more of a share of restaurant sales is showing that while traffic is down, their willingness to spend is up because of their ability and capital to spend at a restaurant. Also, you're seeing restaurants now more than ever having some positive outlook on their own sales and on their own expenditures, even though they think the economy is doing bad. So what I find interesting is, even though we know the economy is doing bad, even though we know there's issues going on with the broader consumer sentiment, restaurants are still doing well, or still doing decent, I should say. I wouldn't say they're doing spectacular, but things aren't changing drastically for the negative through this reporting. So, if you are a restaurant owner, I'd love to hear in the comments, are you planning on expanding or investing in new expenditures for your business? How are you feeling right now? I would love to hear how restaurant owners are doing or restaurant managers are doing, because right now the data is showing that not much is getting worse and it's kind of just staying the same. So let me know your thoughts. All right. One last thing I thought was interesting. So, I was on Reddit. I've been going on this KitchenConfidential Reddit, which I've always loved. And there was a post posted three days ago that I wanted to share. So, the title of this is Ramblings of an Old Chef. And I just wanted to read through this because it was really interesting and I wanted to break down some points. So, quote, "For no particular reason at all, Other than the bottle of whiskey I've been drinking, I thought I would dump some opinions from a 30-plus year kitchen veteran for discussion. Agree, disagree, ignore me, whatever. So I'm going to go through these. Truffles are overrated. Yes, they're kind of nice, but not worth the price or hype. I agree with that. If you're spending more than $150 on a workhorse knife, you're falling for the hype. Yes, get an expensive fancy pants knife for some jobs, but a true workhorse should be easy to sharpen, and you shouldn't SHIT your pants anytime it's dropped or knocked. I've used rosewood handled Victorinox knives year in and year out, and they have outlasted and outperformed way more expensive knives consistently. I agree with that as well. The idea of the workhorse knife being something you invest in, it should be your baby. It should be the thing that you're working with constantly, but it should also not be a burden in order to keep well. So I agree with that. Your job is to cook food for the customers. Don't complain when they order close to closing. It's money, and that money keeps you in a job. On that note, lose your ego. If they want a fried egg on bread, make it and charge them for it. It's simple. I think this is a really good reframing. This idea, customers come in late, they come in at the end of the shift. Look, you're there to serve food. You're there in the hospitality business. You need to serve them. If they want something extra, don't complain. See it as a money-making opportunity. Great advice. I've worked in so many kitchens, from fine dining to cafes, bulk catering to personal shopping. It's the same everywhere. Pay attention to the small things. Smudges on plates, dead leaves in a salad, seasoning in your dressing. The small things are what make you successful or a failure. Couldn't agree more. Just spitting great advice right here. This person goes on to say F celery, which I'm not sure what their personal hatred for celery is, but I thought it was funny. Next tip, front of house are not your enemy. They have the ability to make you look great or to talk about you in a bad way. They'll do either depending on how you treat them. Yeah, they screw up, but so does a kitchen. We're just better at covering it up. You are not the only thing that makes that kitchen work. It takes everyone in the brigade. Do your job to your best abilities and support others to do the same. The minute you tell yourself you're a god, you will fall down. I guarantee it. Man, is this like really good advice? You're a team. You need to work together. I never understood the front of house, back house dynamic when we were seen as enemies. We make each other look good. If we're not working in sync as a team, we're failing. And I think it's a true sign of poor restaurant culture when front of house and back of house have a rivalry and can't get along. You will likely spend more time with your crew than your family. Look out for each other. Have the hard conversations. Check in with each other. We lose too many in the industry to keeping quiet, so speak up. If you're struggling, don't do it alone. If you're alone, DM me. I'm here. I love this. When I first read this, I honestly welled up a little bit. There are so many times in the restaurant industry where I dealt with anxiety and stress, and I just wasn't able to communicate that to people. And I've met a lot of people that have not been able to do that as well, and I've seen people have those issues. So all that to say is that if you're going through stuff, talk about it with your fellow line cooks, with your fellow team. If you see someone who needs help, don't be afraid to talk to them. People in the food industry, especially in restaurants, struggle too much with being able to talk with each other, and I think it's important, and I think it's something that is, the dynamics of the food world are changing, but I still think it's important to call out. He goes on to say, take out the poop shoot from your prawns. I like coriander. I'm okay with that. You don't? Great. Move on. The famous cilantro gene. Taste, season, taste again, repeat, and then have a good service and kick arse chefs. And the responses are amazing. People going on saying the rosewood Victorinox knives are great. Apart from the celery, I agree. And then, just so many different things. 20 plus years here, agreed on everything except celery. I would just go look at this thread. I think it's really awesome. And I think there's one thing here that there was one response here. It says, powerful words, all true. I'm approaching the 27-year mark myself. Dishwasher to executive chef and then some. As far as titles, currently working as a PM chef, running a small kitchen in Atlanta. And in all my years, the only clear advice I can add to your post is know your worth. If you know you can do the job and actually care about it, you're already in the 1%. Try to find the best people to work for and trust that gut. To value yourself and your skills will carry you through many a tough time. So I just wanted to end on that. A lot going on in the world right now. A lot of crazy stuff. Kitchens are stressful. And I just find this community of chefs and cooks in the food industry to be able to be so open and share these things really important. So that is all for this week's solo repertoire report. I will be back with Justin next week. Thank you all again for listening to the show. If you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Share this post. We are close to 1,300 subscribers on YouTube, so please subscribe if you're not following. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please leave a review and follow along as well. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all are doing well, and I will see you in the next Repertoire Report.